Usually when you think of a dictionary, you think of this cold, hard precision. Like a word means one specific thing, right?
Right, yeah. It's binary, it's clean.
Exactly. It's comforting. But the moment you step into the actual world of the modern workplace, into the really messy reality of human psychology and stress, that precision just entirely vanishes.
Oh, totally. It goes out the window.
You are suddenly looking at this linguistic landscape that is incredibly murky. It's just filled with these coded warnings and survival tactics.
Yeah, the language adapts to the stress.
So today, your custom deep dive is a mission to decode this massive stack of professional jargon, idioms, and psychological phrases that you've brought to us. We aren't just going to define these terms like a glossary.
Right, because that wouldn't actually help you understand them in practice.
Exactly. We're going to map out what this specific vocabulary reveals about the modern human experience. We're going from the brutal reality of corporate survival all the way to the subtle art of establishing boundaries and really just reconnecting with society.
It's a journey, for sure.
It really is. So, okay, let's unpack this. I want to start right at the macro level. When you look at the language of the modern workplace, there's this glaring fundamental tension between what is expected of us and what we actually experience day to day.
Yeah, and that tension, it comes from a massive historical shift that our language is just desperately trying to process. Like we are basically caught in the transition between an industrial age role and an information age role.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. Think about the psychological demands of the industrial age. The ideal worker was essentially a cog, right?
Yeah.
The system demanded physical execution, simple obedience.
Do what you're told.
Exactly. Complete standardization. You clocked in, you pulled a lever, you went home. But today, the information age role demands something entirely different.
Right. It's not physical anymore.
No, it requires intense cognitive drive, constant adaptability, creativity. You are no longer following a rigid manual. Your actual job is to generate new knowledge.
And generating new knowledge requires a completely different management style. I mean, you can't just put creative problem solving on a conveyor belt.
You really can't. But they try.
Right. To manage all this complex knowledge, companies have built these incredibly elaborate frameworks to force everyone to move, all in tandem. They want this perfect synchronization.
Yeah, they adopt these agile methodologies, like Scrum.
Which, side note, isn't Scrum originally a rugby thing?
Yeah. It's from a highly physical, totally combative rugby formation, and now we use it to deliver software updates or project milestones in these strict 2-week sprints. It's pitched as this highly efficient, collaborative utopia.
But it doesn't always feel like a utopia.
Not at all. It creates massive psychological friction. I mean, you have management trying to measure information age cognitive work using industrial age assembly line metrics.
Oh, wow.
They want these profound creative breakthroughs, but they want them delivered like clockwork every 14 days.
That sounds exhausting. And honestly, if we're supposed to be these highly creative, empowered information age workers moving beautifully all in tandem, why does it feel like so many people spend their days just pounding sand?
Pounding sand, yeah, that's the perfect phrase for it.
Right. Just doing totally useless, unstrategic work that wastes resources without yielding any actual progress. Like,
Yeah.
you sit in front of a spreadsheet for 6 hours knowing it will literally never be read.
Right, because pounding sand perfectly captures the sheer futility of it.
Yeah.
Without proper strategy from leadership, the information age simply devolves into a digital assembly line.
Yeah.
When you strip away a worker's agency and force them to execute meaningless tasks, they begin to feel like they just grind their life away.
It's just trapped.
Exactly. They're trapped in a system where they have no creative input, no other options, and they're just pushing buttons to satisfy a metric.
Which inevitably leads to burning the candle at both ends. You wake up early to clear the meaningless admin tasks, and then you stay up late trying to actually do the creative work you were hired for.
It's a self-perpetuating loop of exhaustion. And when you combine that sheer exhaustion with poor leadership, the culture doesn't just stagnate, it sours.
Things get dark.
Really dark. People drop into pure survival mode. You cross the line from a difficult workplace into a deeply toxic one, and the language instantly shifts from collaborative to defensive. And honestly, violent.
That shift in language is chilling to me. When the environment goes bad, the jargon gets so intense. Like we see companies implementing stack ranking.
Oh yeah. That's a brutal one.
For anyone who has managed to avoid this, stack ranking is basically the illusion of meritocracy completely weaponized. It assumes this bell curve of talent, and it forces managers to rank their employees against each other.
Right, somebody has to be at the bottom.
Exactly. And then they routinely fire that bottom percentage, even if everyone on the team is objectively a high performer. No wonder people literally rejoice when a company abolishes stack ranking.
Well, yeah, because it actively destroys psychological safety. It forces you to view your colleagues not as teammates, but as direct threats to your livelihood.
It's Hunger Games in the office.
Totally.
Yeah.
And in an environment completely devoid of trust, you inevitably see the rise of the brown noser.
Oh, man. The brown noser.
Yeah, and this isn't just someone being polite.
Yeah.
It is a calculated survival tactic. They realize that in a subjective, fear-based ranking system, doing good work matters way less than just agreeing with everything the manager says to curry favor.
But it's far beyond just brown nosing, right? People start deploying these underhanded tactics.
Yes. Deceptive, secret maneuvers to sabotage peers and secure a promotion.
It turns the office into a gladiatorial arena. I mean, there's a phrase in your sources here that is incredibly visceral. Sending a junior developer into a chaotic, hostile meeting is described as throwing them into a wood chipper.
A wood chipper.
Literally a wood chipper. We are talking about a Tuesday morning marketing sync, and the language we use implies total bloody dismemberment.
It's wild. But that visceral metaphor reveals how completely destructive these environments are to a person's psyche. Like, the violence of the phrase matches the internal emotional damage of being publicly humiliated or scapegoated by senior leadership.
But practically speaking, for you, the listener, in an environment that vicious, where stepping into a conference room is like stepping into a wood chipper, isn't trying to protect yourself or speaking up just gonna put a massive target on your back.
See, that is the paralyzing fear that keeps toxic systems running. However, progressive organizations are finally looking at the data and realizing the math simply doesn't work.
Because everyone just leaves.
Right. Constant burnout, high turnover, project delays, they all ultimately diminish value. They don't just inflict misery on the employees. They actively destroy the company's brand and their bottom line.
So how do you actually survive it then?
Well, surviving this requires systemic change. On a personal level, it means establishing healthy boundaries, strictly defining what you will and will not tolerate. But on a structural level, the company has to completely redefine its relationship with failure.
What does a structural change to failure actually look like in practice?
It looks like instituting blameless postmortems.
Blameless postmortems. Okay.
Yeah, this concept comes from high-stakes engineering. So, when a major server crash happens, instead of hunting for a scapegoat to fire, the team conducts a rigorous review with one explicit rule. No individual is blamed.
Oh, wow. So you remove the fear of the wood chipper entirely.
Exactly. The investigation focuses solely on the systemic flaws that allowed a human error to cause a catastrophe in the first place.
Which makes sense because if I know I won't be fired for a mistake, I'm going to flag the mistake immediately instead of hiding it.
Right. It's basically the cultural equivalent of fixing tech debt.
Oh, I love that framing. Fixing tech debt. That's when engineers have to pause building shiny new features to go back and rewrite the underlying messy, patched together code before it all collapses.
Yep.
You were saying we have to fix cultural debt too.
Exactly, because if you ignore the underlying system, catastrophic accidents are inevitable. And when things truly go off the rails due to negligence, companies find themselves legally and morally forced to offer these massive compensation packages.
Right.
Throwing money at a disaster doesn't fix a toxic culture, but it is the steep, unavoidable price of ignoring that cultural debt.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because to survive this environment, to navigate around the wood chippers and spot the underhanded tactics before they hit you, you have to become an expert translator.
Yeah, you have to decode the language in real time.
Right. In artificial intelligence, there's this fascinating concept called bloat in context. If you feed an AI model a prompt filled with too much redundant, fluffy information, its attention mechanism just breaks down.
It gets lost.
Yeah, it literally cannot find the key instructions hidden in all the noise. And corporate jargon does the exact same thing to human cognition.
It really does. It is deliberate cognitive overload. The language is intentionally bloated to obscure the reality of a situation. It makes it impossible for you to effectively critique it.
If you've ever sat in an all-hands meeting and listened to an executive talk for 20 minutes about synergistic paradigms and leveraging holistic bandwidth, you've experienced bloat in context. Your brain just tunes it out.
Yep, it's just static.
So how do we cut through that? How do we filter out a company's poster voice? That hyper-polished, relentlessly optimistic global marketing tone that sounds amazing but means absolutely nothing.
You counteract it by refusing to think in a vacuum.
Okay.
If you are analyzing a corporate strategy or a new product isolated from external feedback or real market demand, you are in a vacuum. You are essentially blind.
So what's the alternative?
You have to look under the hood. You bypass the shiny exterior, you ignore the poster voice, and you examine the actual internal mechanisms, the budget allocations, the core logic actually driving the decision.
So you really have to adopt a baseline of professional skepticism.
Exactly. Right. You learn to take bold claims with a grain of salt, particularly from leaders who are known to exaggerate. You train yourself to spot vaporware.
Oh, vaporware, the ultimate phantom of the tech industry.
Oh, yeah.
That's the highly hyped software or hardware that is promised for years, attracts millions in investment, and then might not ever actually exist, right?
Right. And to avoid falling for vaporware or any false promises, really, you have to demand the litmus test.
The litmus test.
Just like the definitive chemical test for acidity, you need a concrete, undeniable standard that proves a government's or a company's actual commitment to reform. Don't listen to the poster voice. Look for the litmus test.
I like that.
Are they just talking about diversity, or are they actually promoting diverse leaders? Are they talking about work-life balance, or people actually logging off at 5 p.m.?
That's a huge difference. And when you are the one communicating, the goal is to do the exact opposite of the poster voice, right? The term in the sources here is speaking pithily.
Right. Speaking pithily.
Like summarizing a complex, chaotic situation in just 2 or 3 sentences. Stripping away all the bloat so your team can actually understand the directive.
Yes, and establishing truth in a sea of jargon often comes down to very subtle conversational anchors.
Like
a speaker might drop a rapid side note, true, into a dialogue. It serves as a quick verbal confirmation to underline the credibility of an unexpected fact. It brings the listener right back to reality. Navigating these environments is described as following a carefully charted course. You really have to map your way through the dangerous reefs of corporate spin, avoiding the bloat and constantly seeking those litmus tests.
But, even with a perfectly charted course, and even if you speak pithily, ships still hit the reef.
They do.
Conflicts arise. Failures happen. Which brings us to the internal landscape. How do you, the listener, mentally process these moments of failure and take back control without just losing your mind?
Well, the language we use around failure is remarkably revealing. It spans from minor personal rejections to catastrophic professional collapses, like we talk about completely striking out.
Right, which could be asking someone on a date and getting rejected, or pitching a major business deal that just totally falls flat.
Exactly. But then there are phrases like experiencing a lost carry.
Lost carry, that is such a specific phrase. I know it spans across logistics, finance, and even gaming.
Yeah, in logistics, it's a drop shipment. In finance, it's losing the yield on an investment. And in competitive gaming, it means your core player, your carry, makes a critical error in a late-game team fight, and it results in total defeat.
But why borrow a gaming term for a real-world professional failure? It feels like a defense mechanism.
It absolutely is.
Right. Because by gamifying the failure, by calling it a lost carry, you create this emotional buffer. If it's just a game, the failure hurts a little less.
It is a profound coping mechanism. Because when you had the advantage and you dropped it, the emotional fallout is heavy. And sometimes the failure isn't even a mistake you made, Sometimes it's someone's sudden, unfathomable departure from your team or your life.
Yeah, you just can't make sense of it.
Right. You simply cannot wrap your head around why they left or why the system broke down.
And people take lessons hard when projects collapse. It isn't just a quick brush off. It leads directly to rumination.
Rumination is probably the most dangerous psychological trap we face.
Because it's not productive, right?
Not at all. It's not productive reflection. It's chronic, anxiety-inducing, obsessive overthinking. You replay the lost carry in your head 1,000 times, paralyzing your ability to make future decisions.
Ugh, I've been there.
And on a macro scale, when an injustice occurs or a deeply flawed policy is enacted, that internal pain turns outward, manifesting as collective public outrage.
Yeah. And human nature makes us want to lash out when we feel that outrage, especially if you are dealing with a toxic colleague who is capable of turning you off and turning you over.
That phrase is terrifying.
It really is. It implies this terrifying level of psychological control. Like someone who can manipulate your emotions, shut down your arguments, and completely dominate your reality. When faced with that, the natural instinct is either to fight dirty or just freeze in total panic. So how does someone actually handle that without becoming toxic themselves?
The antidote to that kind of manipulation is being the level-headed leader. In a crisis, a level-headed person refuses the binary choice of fighting dirty or freezing.
Okay.
Instead of letting timidity prevent them from addressing the issue, they offer a highly calibrated response to the provocation. They de-escalate by focusing entirely on rational, practical steps.
So they basically remove the ego from the equation.
Exactly. They create a culture
Hmm.
where they might calmly ask a colleague to point out to me any errors they've made, which
Yeah.
demonstrates vulnerability. If a server goes down, they tell the team to gently ding the manager, just a quick ping, rather than initiating a panic-inducing alarm. They focus on accountability, ensuring everyone is actually pulling their weight so that the burden of the crisis doesn't just crush one individual.
But what about dealing with the brown noser or like the arrogant know-it-all who is actively trying to turn you over? I mean, you can't just be vulnerable with them. They'll eat you alive.
No, you can't. You handle them using a technique called SODIC to put it back from them.
Oh, what's that?
When someone makes a grand, arrogant claim or tries to dump an impossible task on your desk, you don't argue with them. You simply return the burden of reality to them.
Okay, give me an example.
You say something like, "That sounds like a fascinating strategy. I look forward to seeing how you execute the first phase by Friday."
Oh, wow. That's brilliant.
Right. You force them to carry the weight of their own bloat. This calm, immovable approach is how a leader manages to get concession to the team. They win the necessary compromises to move forward, or they successfully pivot an entire strategy like, say, shifting a startup from hardware to software without tearing the culture apart.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you? We've talked about recognizing the industrial age friction, fixing cultural tech debt, and adopting a level-headed response to provocation. But sometimes minor pivots and rational de-escalation just aren't enough.
No, they aren't.
Right. Sometimes the system you are in is so fundamentally broken, so deep in the wood chipper, that you can't just ding the manager to fix it. Think about setting a broken bone. You can't just put a bandage on it and take some painkillers. If it healed wrong, you have to subject yourself to the intense, acute pain of re-breaking it so it can finally heal straight.
Yeah.
So the final section of our vocabulary deals with these extreme measures, the radical resets.
Yeah, because there are moments of sheer undeniable clarity where you realize you just have to snip all the wires.
Snip all the wires.
You cannot salvage the current project, the current job, or the current relationship.
Yeah.
You cut every connection to the old way of operating and you start completely from scratch.
It requires this intentional, constructive destruction. Like you have to literally rip out the old rotting carpet just to see if the hardwood floors underneath are even salvageable. You use brute force to tear away the decay.
Exactly. And if you are trying to find the truth of why a catastrophic failure happened in your life, you have to leave no stone unturned. You adopt the mindset of a forensic investigator. No excuse is accepted. No corner of the failure is ignored.
But tearing everything down, snipping the wires, turning over every stone, I mean, that sounds incredibly exhausting. How do you survive a radical reset without just falling back into rumination and burnout?
You survive it by realizing that the reset fundamentally changes how you process failure going forward. You learn to handle mistakes efficiently as they happen. It's like courteously repairing your divot on a golf course.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. Take a chunk out of the grass, you immediately retrieve it, pat it down, and you walk to the next hole. You make an error, you fix it, and you move on without all the emotional baggage.
You stop carrying the weight of the mistake.
Exactly. Over time, dealing with these early, painful setbacks actually immunizes you. It's akin to catching chickenpox as a child.
Oh, right.
You face the virus early, you build the antibodies, and you are protected against it when you're older.
Yeah.
You build an emotional immune system against failure.
And once you've built that immunity, once you've snipped the wires on the toxic elements of your life, you can finally change your focus. You stop obsessing over the lost carries, and you start paying attention to the highlights. You actually get to enjoy the championship game of your own life.
It is a profound shift in perspective. Despite the exhaustion, the vaporware, the underhanded tactics you've endured, you emerge optimistic.
Yeah.
You adopt a new mindset or perhaps a new environment that succeeds in turning you back on the world. You step out of the defensive isolation of the wood chipper and you re-engage with society on your own terms.
Man, you've taken quite a journey with us today. We started by looking at the exhausting friction of applying industrial age metrics to information age minds. We mapped the descent into toxic environments, figuring out how to survive the stack ranking, and establish healthy boundaries through blameless postmortems. We decoded the bloat in context to find the actual litmus tests of truth.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We explored how to gamify our unfathomable failures to prevent rumination, and finally, we learned that sometimes you just have to bravely snip all the wires, repair your divots, and turn yourself back on the world.
You know, language is essentially a living fossil record of our daily struggles. Every idiom, every piece of jargon we use was born because someone, somewhere, needed a coping mechanism for a specific psychological pressure.
Huh, that's a great way to put it.
So if a future historian looked only at the phrases we've unpacked today, the wood chippers, the lost carries, the burning candles, and the radical resets, what would they assume about the human condition right now? Are we consciously designing our modern language to communicate more efficiently? Or are we just desperately inventing new ways to emotionally buffer ourselves against the incredibly complex, overwhelming systems we've built?
Wow, that is the perfect question to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, demand the litmus test, and pay very close attention to the words you use every single day because they are telling you exactly what you're trying to survive.